FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Will, welcome back. You are on the air.
Yeah, I actually was just calling to. Oh, first of all, though, I like your show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. But I was calling to just talk about the double standard and the hypocrisy with the Democrat Party, and especially Bernie Sanders supporters. You want to talk about Donald Trump having a rough go at it, and nobody blinked an eye. But now she's getting a little heat on the Democrat side, and boo-hooing to everybody about it and asking him to come out and condemn it. And it's just a double standard. I thought I'd bring.
It's a huge double standard, Will, and I'm glad that you called in and pointed it out, because the folks protesting outside of the Trump rallies who are causing all the problems are. Can you point? Have you heard anybody point to them and say, "Well, Bernie Sanders sent those people there, or Hillary Clinton sent those people there"? Have the mainstream media attached those protesters to a specific campaign? No. They've tried to blame Donald Trump for the fact that they're out there. And the sweet irony of this one is these are Bernie Sanders supporters who the Clinton campaign alleges are being stirred up by none other than Bernie and his top campaign managers themselves. It's fun to watch. You're right, particularly after what we've seen leading up to now, with Trump somehow being blamed for instigating the violence among these idiots that have gathered outside of his rallies. You're entitled to say whatever you want in America until your fist makes contact with the next guy's nose. And those people have been excused for what they've done because obviously Donald Trump forced them to feel that way. We've abdicated all responsibility in this country in so many ways that it's sickening. Our guest right now is Alex Epstein. Alex is the president and founder of Industrial Progress, and he's got a book out right now as well about the moral case for fossil fuels. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thrilled to have you here. I've often wondered when, the state of Missouri has some of the lowest gas taxes in the country, and therefore we probably have some of the lower gas prices in the country. But there are places, California, how much is gas in California right now? Is it $4 a gallon?
Let's see. I live in California. I was up in L.A. the other day. It was upwards of $3.50 per premium, definitely over $3 for everything.
And it's not because they have to haul it any further. It's because the government has decided in California, just much like Barack Obama has, that he's going to punish you out of using more fuel than you need.
Right. Of course, they have an idea of how much we need. It's interesting, though, because Obama said in his State of the Union that, $2 for a gallon of gas ain't bad, as if that's what he's in favor of, and yet the whole anti-fossil fuel movement says that we should price fossil fuels out of affordability, which means that energy is priced out of affordability.
He promised that when he was running for president, basically.
Well, exactly. Bankrupting coal companies, which he's unfortunately done, but he also pledged to end the tyranny of oil, and he actually had the gall to analogize oil and coal companies to Nazis and communists, and nobody gave him any flack for that, which just shows how prevalent what I call the moral case against fossil fuels is. It's just considered evil to be involved in producing the fuel that keeps all of us alive.
I've kind of termed this administration's approach to energy as an anti-energy policy. But it's really an anti-fossil fuel policy, and maybe you can talk about some of the ways it's impacted the industries.
Yeah, well, an anti-fossil fuel policy is an anti-energy policy, and you notice that the administration and its green supporters also oppose nuclear energy for the most part and hydroelectric energy. So what they're really against is practical energy. The green movement has only supported one form of energy in its entire history, and that is imaginary energy. That is, energy sources that are unreliable, expensive, don't work, and won't work, so they can pretend to support them while opposing others. And what that means in practice, to your question, is that if people can't afford energy, if it's too expensive, if it's not reliable, to that extent, every single aspect of our economy becomes less productive and every single product and service becomes more expensive.
And everybody who drives their Chevy Volt to the fueling station to plug it in, it's being powered by coal if they're in the St. Louis area.
Yeah, I mean, I call the Tesla the coal car, which Elon Musk doesn't like too much. But yeah, if you look at the whole manufacturing process of all of these things, they're all based on affordable, reliable sources of energy. Nobody's making a windmill with a windmill. Nobody's manufacturing a solar panel with solar panels. They need real sources of energy to engage in these kinds of experiments. And that's why people should investigate the possibility of, hey, is there a moral case for fossil fuels? That is there a case that we should be using more of them, not less? Because as we do that, throughout history and today, life gets better and better, and the negatives are far outweighed by the positives.
Right. And what, I've talked to people. I was a television news reporter here in St. Louis for many years before starting this show. And I've talked to people at Ameren, which is our local power company, electric power company. They run several coal-burning power facilities here in the greater St. Louis area. And every time new regulations would be handed down, they're facing millions of dollars in costs and deadlines to put these scrubbers on. And their argument is the production of this energy has never been cleaner. Piling on these additional regulations is not achieving anything but forcing us to shut down coal-burning power plants that we can't modify them enough.
Right. I mean, with any technology, you have to look carefully at both the benefits and the risks. And with any kind of emissions or concentration issues, you have to realize that there are healthy thresholds of things and then unhealthy thresholds of things. So it's not true that any amount of emissions is bad and needs to be eliminated. You have to compare, hey, how harmful are these emissions, if at all, compared to other normal things in life? And so, for example, which emissions are more consequential and potentially negative? The emissions of a coal plant or the emissions of a human? Now, if you're going to get sick and die, I can guarantee it's going to be from a human instead of a coal plant, right? Because we are emitters of disease. So we have this bizarre standard that our machines can't emit anything, and yet it's so inconsequential given the state of modern technology. So these are not at all about human life, because if you valued human life, you'd value the coal plants. They're about figuring out ways to oppose industrial progress, which is the purpose of the green movement.
Your book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, I would assume it's impossible to write a book like that and not address the argument about climate change.
Right. So to get to the earlier points I mentioned about you have to look at both positives and negatives carefully, and also you have to look at thresholds. The question is, we've increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere from 0.03% of the atmosphere to 0.04% of the atmosphere. We're on track to increase it to 0.05% of the atmosphere in some future. The question is that an unhealthy threshold? And if so, to what extent? Is it truly catastrophic, which might justify some restrictions? Or is it, just a mild kind of risk? And if you look at it, well, historically, we're at 1/20th the height of CO2 in the atmosphere. So we're actually at a very low point in geological terms. Temperature-wise, we're at a low point. And what we see as we increase the amount of CO2 is just a very mild warming, the type of warming that would be not noticeable if it weren't for instruments. So the idea that the amount of CO2 that we're putting in the atmosphere is some catastrophe, is just a fabrication. And the genesis of it is this belief by the Greens that any industry is bad, any changing of nature is bad. So they assume, hey, if we add a little more CO2, because we added it, it was bad. But if nature added it, it would be fine. So there's a deeply anti-human bias. And if people want to see the data on this, they can go to moralcaseforfossilfuels.com. That has a lot of graphs about the actual impact of CO2 and the actual impact of fossil fuels. But you'll see that if you care about human life, fossil fuels are amazing, and the people that claim they're not, at least the leaders, are ultimately against human life. They view humans as a blight on the planet, and I view the planet as a place for human beings to be productive and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, you got to be careful these days because some attorneys general might want to charge you with RICO violations.
Well, I actually went to the Senate. I testified in the Senate about a month ago, and I called for the resignation of Senator Whitehouse because he is the one who's leading that charge against companies saying things that he disagrees with, which is the whole crux of the RICO atrocity.
Yeah, trying to shut down debate on the whole issue. Alex Epstein, we appreciate your time. You can go to industrialprogress.com as part of the website, and his book is The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. Good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you have a good day. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, makes you wonder. Have you seen the cable commercial where the people are the settlers? Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
You almost feel like these green people want you to go back to being the settlers before there was any industrial progress. How embarrassing. It really is. 314-969-9797. We're going to talk about your daughter and the military draft, and we'll take your phone calls after the top of the hour. You're listening to The Marc Cox Show.